Al, if you can start with roll call, please.
Benson.
Here.
Ferdig. Here. Hoffner. Here. Minor.
Here.
Dozier.
Here.
Schron.
Here.
Weber.
Here.
Mayor Johnson.
Here.
City Manager Leon.
Here.
Next, we have public appearances. This is a time when anyone in the audience wishing to address the commission about something not on tonight's agenda can speak to us about that topic. Seeing no movement, we'll move on to our consent agenda. We have one item, and that is establishing August 12th, 2019 as the date for a public hearing on the request for a special events retail on sale malt beverage license for August 15th from 2B3 LLC, which is RB Beers and Burgers, 2901 Broadway, and that will be for the Lewis and Clark Theater at 328 Walnut Street. This is a pleasure.
I'll move the consent agenda. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? All right, everyone in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. Next, we have the presentation by City Manager Amy Leon of our proposed 2020 budget. I should also mention before we proceed, first of all, I'd just like to thank our staff for all the work that they put into preparing tonight's budget. I know it's been a real struggle this year with the flooding and other constraints. Maybe a little more challenging than we're used to, but we are also used to being in challenging circumstances. So thank you for your creativity and your expertise to help us get where we are today. Second of all, I'm going to leave around 6 o'clock. I'm going to go to the county commission meeting, and I have some comments I want to deliver there about the post that Gary Swenson made, and so I plan to go over there, speak in public comments, and then come back and join you. Any further discussion? Then I will turn it over to City Manager Amy Leon.
Thanks, everybody. We have some staff also that's attending the county commission meeting as well, so if there's questions pertaining to those particular budgets, we will be answering them. When they're finished, they'll come back over. Dana Schmidt and Dave Mingo are both there, so we'll help out in the meantime. What I want to do tonight is visit with you primarily about our operating budget, but of course we can talk about any of the items that are in the proposed budget. We're all sitting on this side of the table because we are live streaming our meeting, and because we don't have microphones, please use your outside voices so that we can make sure that our audio equipment picks up the video for anybody that's watching at home. So I wanted to share with you our mission, which is to provide exemplary experiences, services, and spaces that create opportunities for everyone to learn, engage, and thrive. The staff, along with your input, has tried to put together a budget that exemplifies that to the best of our ability. So tonight I will also update you on our process with FEMA and the Huther Family Aquatics Facility and the impacts that has on the budget. I realize that is capital. However, it's probably two of our biggest budget impacts to our budget, so I want to visit with you all about those. We'll also talk about utility rates, projections for sales tax, personnel services, and then also I want to touch on some of our partnerships with Yankton County and some of the things they'll be discussing this evening as well. We can also, of course, discuss anything that you all want to discuss because this is your budget meeting. So please feel free to interrupt me, ask questions. I don't intend to go through all 190 pages. We don't have enough cookies in the other room to get through that far, and I don't think the air conditioner will get us through that either. So we can talk as much in detail as you want about any of the budgets. However, we're also available to do that. You're not voting tonight on anything, but you can certainly provide us direction. We have not had a lot of time since the budget's been presented to you on the 31st of July. It's available for the public, but we haven't had a lot of time for public input yet either. So we we wanna make sure that we take that into account, that that's something that's gonna be happening. So this budget for 2020 is the largest budget that the city's ever seen. It's $71,510,684. Hi, Commissioner, sorry. So, part of that is those large capital improvement projects that we are going to work on. Included in that number is $9.5 million for $9.5 million in grant funds. We have $10 million in flood repair budgeted. We also have the opt-out for the user-family aquatics program. So that's some of the reason why you see that large number. I also want to remind everybody that there is a 6% reduction, however, from this year to next year in the general fund. So this year we're estimated to spend 17 million, a little more than 17 million in the general fund. Next year it's closer to 16. So that's $1 million approximately less than what we're projecting to spend. So I don't want the commission or anybody in the public to think that, you know, that number is a reflection that all of our departments are just going crazy with spending. For those of you who've been part of the process long enough, and you all know that we operate pretty lean, and what we don't spend gets rolled into the next year. And when you look in deeper into the budget, you see that a lot of our projected revenue is what's being brought forward, what isn't spent this year. So that's important to understand. Sales tax for the city right now is looking stronger. So you all know we had a positive June, and we're happy about that. Year to date, that puts us up 2.92%. Summers are typically a stronger time for us, so that's good. Our building permit numbers are good right now. We're seeing growth in both residential and commercial sector, and some of the commercial permits that we issued are happening. So I actually had to get some gas in my car today, and I looked over at the mall and I saw some work happening on the facade of the mall, and I didn't slam on my brakes because I didn't want to create it, but I did gooseneck, and I was like, good, great, this is happening. So we're seeing some movement on things, and we've been in contact with the hotel folks as well, and they're planning to move ahead as well. So I think that is a positive sign for our economy, our local economy. I think we can all say with some of the momentum and things that are happening in our community that will continue to grow. We know Mount Marty has plans to grow their enrollment, and that will have a positive impact on us. And we know that we've had some success recently with Westbrook Estates and that housing development, and we're still building some new housing development in the community as well. So that all bodes well for us to grow the pie. You'll hear us say that all the time. Carving up the budget doesn't matter a lot if the pie isn't growing, so that's what we're trying to do. With that said, what I budgeted for projections is pretty conservative, because I still have some trepidation about what's happening in the national and local economy. For 2019, I budgeted a 1% growth. While we are close to 3% right now in sales tax, I just feel that there's a lot of uncertainty with the year we've had in weather-wise. I think that's going to impact agriculture, which we all know will make a big difference, both not just for farmers, but also for what folks buy and how things go overall for us in our community. So I want to be conservative there. I've also been very conservative with 2020's projection and budgeted 0% growth. And that's not to be a negative Nelly or anything. I feel that we're probably ripe for a market correction. I've read some journal articles that say we may have another small recession. And retail is still changing, and we're still going through that. I'm an optimist, however, I think I'm also a realist, so I'd rather be very conservative and be wrong than be very liberal with my estimates and be wrong. So that's where those projections are, and as we go through the year, next year, we'll be able to talk a little bit more about how we think we'll end up. And that makes me wanna segue a little bit to talk to you about some things you might hear in the 2020 legislative session. There are some cities requesting more information from the Department of Revenue on reporting sales tax. There's a few of the larger cities that would like to see some sort of policy change or bill that asks for a different type of reporting information. We get asked that all the time. What's internet sales? What's, retail sales? What's Walmart sales? We don't have much detail, we just have generalities, and a lot of cities feel that they would have a better attempt at projection if they knew, had more information from the Department of Revenue, so you may see that. Also, there's a few cities that would like to see a bill that provides for us to have a little extension on when we need to submit the budget to our respective governing boards. I think that could be okay in the sense that, as you know, we start in April and May budgeting. It's pretty hard to predict what's gonna happen a full year ahead, and that's partially why we always are conservative. We do need a number of months to put the budget together. However, some folks feel that if they had a couple more months, they could have maybe better estimates and have a better understanding of where they are in the year. So you may see that when the mayor and I go to Chamberlain to the first class mayor's meeting. I'm sure we'll find out whether or not he's put together a bill or bills on those types of things. Our property tax, we have a slight increase projected, really dictated by the state formula. As you know, our property tax was frozen by the state at a time when we had a lower property tax than we might have hoped for, and so that's always sort of been an issue for us and will continue to be. So again, really our options are to grow or to, ask for citizens to help us with opting out, which the citizens did on the aquatics facility. So that is one of our challenges when it comes to budgeting. The outside agencies, I know we always talk about those, and we talk about them at our capital improvement plan meeting. I won't talk about a lot unless you want to. They are on page 72, and that's general fund outside agencies, and then page 103. We have not changed YAPG or CBB or projected any increases in many of the BBB outside agencies, with the exception of Onward Yankton. The proposal there is not to fund Onward Yankton in 2020. Riverboat Days also made a request, and I have not recommended funding that as well. I have talked to Riverboat Days, and I've talked to Onward Yankton. They know about those things as well, and they were aware of this need. The other outside agencies, many are now handled by United Way with our collective impact funding. So we will be hearing from them. They are evaluating all the agencies that fall underneath their purview, underneath their goals and mission, and they'll make a determination as to what they will fund and what levels they'll fund as well there. So you may hear some more information about that coming forward. A couple of the outside agencies funds in the BBB, our commitments that we made have been completed. So, for example, the Boys and Girls Club, we have an ongoing commitment with them through the collective impact of United Way. The capital commitment that we made this year was the last year, so that's not in there as well. The HSC payback that we budgeted in the past, we budgeted $25,000 a year. For 2020 anyway, that's not in the BBB budget. The reason for that is we have an allocation of $450,000 to the aquatics facility. We don't know yet how much of that, if any, we may need. Part of that's going to depend upon where our interest rates come in. Al and I are going to be having a conference call with Toby Morris regarding our rating here at the end of the month, so we'll know a little bit more information there. And part of it will have to be determined by what our bids come in. We have been able to pull back a little bit on the estimate, with Stockwell, and we have a large amount in contingency planned for that project. We just don't know at this point, where that's gonna be. So we'll know a little more when our bids come in October for that project, and then we'll have some information in August as well. So, but when you look at that triple B, it does show a $450,000 allocation, and so that takes that balance down to 70 or to 85,000 for next year. So I don't want anyone to panic about that. We'll have to work through that as we work through the financing of the project. The other question that has been brought up to me on the triple B is on our downtown facade improvement program. In the past, we've had 20,000 and it moved up to 30,000. Next year, right now, the proposal is 20,000 for the downtown facade grant program. That's been a very successful program, very popular program. I had a question as to whether or not we wanted to put that up to 30, so that's for you guys to decide if you want to give us that direction. Again, that would take that balance down a little bit further, but I didn't want to not have that discussion since it was brought up as a question. So that might be something that you want to talk about this evening. When we talk about FEMA, those funds are put into the Martin Creek budget. We have $10 million this year and $10 million next year, I believe, in the budget to plan for repair. We have had some initial meetings over the phone with FEMA. We have our scoping meeting with our FEMA representative who's been assigned to us now on the 26th. So I'll know more at our next commission meeting. But we're really finding out that there are baby steps with FEMA, and so we're just getting a little bit more information as we go along. We do believe that initially, at least for many of the funding programs, will be at a 75-25, and if we can show some financial need, that percentage of our match may be a little bit better. So we'll know more as we go along. Of course, we still have to have the match for that, so we're working on putting together base projects, and we'll have those when we meet with FEMA on the 26th from Stockwell. We'll have some bases along the creek to talk about in terms of projects. Our utility rates, we need to talk about again, of course, as we always do. We have rate adjustments, which is city manager talk for rate increases. This is the last year of that $2.90 surcharge for the water treatment improvements. However, we do also have a 5% increase budgeted for water rates next year. We've also proposed 5% for wastewater for a couple of reasons. The general reason always is that, you know, our expenses continue to increase for our utilities. But also, as you know, we're undergoing a conditional assessment with HDR. They're going to be making some recommendations on upgrades and expansions, perhaps that may be needed in the future, or even a new plant. So we want to make sure we're starting to prepare for those things, and we still know we have repairs to be made based on the event that happened in March as well. So we have some work to do there. Solid waste, we've also recommended 5% increase. As you all know, recycling is ever changing, and it's going to continue to change. Plastic bags was one change that was made. We did have a notification of a rate increase from Millennium. They're actually notified us of 2 increases, but we've been able to avoid one of them due to the cleanliness of our product, so our folks are doing a good job there. But recycling will continue, especially for small markets. Small states like ours get more and more expensive, so it'll be a decision for the community as to how much they want to subsidize that for us. So we're continuing on that road. It also needs to be said, and I want to bring up that we're going to have to start talking about joint powers and our relationship there. We're both the partners in joint powers, Vermillion and Yankton, are having a harder time planning and making the capital purchases we need to make. And so whether that's a discussion about how Vermillion handles their recycling, if that needs to be had, if we need to start talking a little more broadly about how we can maybe be more efficient in that process. We're really hard, both of us are hard on those pieces of equipment and facilities because they're just used every single day. So we need to talk about that with our partner. And as you all know, joint powers is kind of like a marriage. We don't always agree on how to do everything, but we gotta find a way together. And so that'll be a big discussion going forward. And I know the folks in Vermillion are talking about those things too. Not a lot to say about Fox Run. We had a wet, rainy spring and summer, as you know. Todd Larson and I are going to sit down with the folks from Fox Run later on here as we get into fall and kind of talk about how things have gone during the busiest months of the golf season. We have heard almost no complaints, very, very positive feedback from Great Life and from citizens on that. So I'll be interested to know how they feel the year went, and be interested to hear your guys' comments if you have any for neighbors that, for those of you that live out in that neighborhood, or those of you who utilize the Fox Run. Personnel services, our most valuable resource that we have in the city, in my opinion, are the people that work here. We've budgeted a 3% increase in wages, as well as traditionally we've done the 1.236% step for those folks eligible for that. This is year 2 of 3 of our commitment with our collective bargaining unit for that increase. And of course, we all know that we have a challenge, not just in our community, but staying competitive in public service with wages. And we certainly want to retain the good folks we have here and attract talent as well when we have folks that think they need to retire, which we've had too many of, but we're happy for them. We've also budgeted 10% for a health insurance increase. We do not know yet what our vendor thinks our health insurance will be increased to. That's another reason why a lot of the communities are saying, hey, it'd be nicer if we had a little more time on the budget, because that's a huge impact to the budget, especially for large cities, and not knowing what those rates may be is sort of a guessing game every summer. I believe the first health insurance meeting is next week, so we should have a little better idea how we're doing as a group. Right now, you'll remember we are with the Avera Health Plan, so we'll make a determination based on what that increase is as to whether or not the committee will investigate other options as well. This evening, Yankton County here in about an hour, a little less, is going to be talking about their provisional budget. And as you know, we have some partnerships, a lot of partnerships with Yankton County. A couple of them include the senior center, the airport, and the library. And I mention those three because those three in their provisional budget have cuts proposed to them. Currently, the level of funding at the airport is $15,000, and the proposal is $7,500. The center varies year to year because we share in the cost 50-50 of maintenance of the building and sort of the physical aspects of the building. Programming and the nutritional things that the center does is based on membership and their grant funding. So that's something that we haven't been involved in. They're proposing $15,500 less than what we budgeted for their share. So we'll see where that comes in this evening. Also, the library, we have a contract with the county regarding library services, and they've contributed $24,000 towards the library. Their provisional budget recommendation right now is $12,000 for that. I have not had a chance to talk with all the commissioners. I did have a chance on Friday, having learned about this late last week, have a chance to sit down with the commission chairman as well as Commissioner Sherry Loest. The mayor and I visited with them. It appears their concern is just to identify funds to put towards road repair. Certainly the county, as you can appreciate, does have financial constraints. That's certainly true, and we appreciate that. We also visited with them about, some other considerations that they might want to make when they're doing their budgeting regarding these. We don't consider these to be donations, they're really partnerships that we're in, and important, I think, to provide services for the whole county. Definitely, while it might look like, well, the city has a big budget, we have $71 million budgeted. What's budgeted doesn't mean that's money in hand. That's, those are things that we project with grants, with revenue coming in, and we still operate pretty leanly when it comes to our facilities, and all the department heads can attest to that. So should we not have the funding projected at this stage in the game, and not having known that at this stage in the game, we are going to have to change services. And I don't want to speak for each of the department heads on what they may or may not do as a result, but they will need to adjust services or operations in some way, because our operating budget is just that tight. So I do want to bring that forward if you all want to talk about that. Of course, we have other partnerships. We share with them the safety center, as well as we work with them providing dispatch services, and E911 money, which is not county money. It's a fund that is used for dispatch services, is something that we work through with them as well. But I just wanted to bring forward those that I'm aware of are on the provisional budget to be adjusted or cut back. So those are the major highlights that I wanted to talk with you about, and I'd like to give you all a chance to give us some direction or ask questions. If there's a budget that you want to particularly dig into, we can certainly go through those things.
Just one thing I had asked you earlier, maybe this is a question on some other people's minds, is in the budget we talk about the family aquatic center costing $17 million. I know the goal is that it won't actually cost that, because our original estimate was around $15 million. Can you talk about what the thought process is there?
Sure. We actually had a meeting with Stockwell today, and they do have some alternatives in the project, of course. They do believe right now they're in about the $16.5 million range, but that is with $1.3 or $1.6 million in contingency. So I'd have to go back and look exactly if it's 1.3 or 1.6, but that is with over $1 million of contingency as well. So part of that will depend upon where things come in, and what alternatives we so choose in the project. But we did cut back on a number of things, but not things that were experience related. So things that we felt were maybe a little bit more on the aesthetic side, or in the actual bathhouse, and not experience type amenities.
Excuse me, in regards to the money being projected to spend in this building, have we done an evaluation of our office space? It seems like, when is that point when we put so much money in this building that we're like, I mean, I wanna save it, I think it's a cool building, but we evaluated, we're planning on $100,000 into wiring, and it seems like it's time for an evaluation of how does it fit us going forward. We have space in the gym, but I think it's time to look at where are we, how much are we spending and going to spend in the future versus our needs.
Yeah, that conversation has come up a number of times. We have a couple We also need to look at some point, replacing windows. The windows that are there, of course, are not original, and some of them, depending on where you are in the building, are not as good as others. And this building is not probably set up for business the way we conduct business in a modern office situation. All that said, we all have, I think, an affinity and a love for our building, and we like the community space of the gym. Past commissions and staff have talked about moving up some operations into the gym, and nobody wants to lose that community space. The building is not ideal, certainly. However, we're making it work, and we're adjusting accordingly. We're outgrowing the building, but for now it's working well. I think a lot of our discussions about major facilities might be, my recommendation is that we talk about them still, but we talk about them a little longer term than we maybe would have talked about them before, in the sense that March 13th events are going to create a lot of impact on our budget and our community for quite a few years, and so we still want to have those conversations. I know the other conversation we've had in past budget meetings has been a library discussion or sports facilities discussions, and we want to have those. I think we'll have to ask, though, that everyone recognize that our one of our major priorities needs to be, the monitoring and focusing on that and talking about those things in a little longer term. So I certainly think we love our location. We love being near the safety center. We love being in the downtown. Other questions or comments?
Is it fair to say, I think it's fair to say, over the next year as we start doing repairs along Mark Creek, those are repairs to the flood structure, right? We have not talked about, made a decision about restoring path, trail.
Well, we don't know enough yet from FEMA to know whether or not that will be something that is included in their funding or not. And so we'll be bringing that decision to you based upon what they, if they'll fund they may fund maintenance trail, but perhaps not a concrete trail, or they may fund a concrete maintenance trail. We know now that we need to provide them two numbers. One of those numbers needs to be what it would cost to restore the creek to how we had it. And we're gonna provide that number, even though we all know that number isn't realistic, because in some places we don't have, the land's gone, the property's gone. And then they'll also be asking for numbers on, various levels of repair or restructure. So in some cases, the best thing might be to do is to acquire some property adjacent and not do anything there, move trail and in other cases it might really be to do a bank stabilization and maybe a larger, more robust mitigation project than was there before. So we'll be walking through that sort of baby steps. I think we've heard from the commission and the community that while everyone knows that the reality of that project is for flood mitigation, that it's become a loved amenity as well, and that they like having interconnected and intermodal transportation. It's kind of, I've always viewed it as sort of Yankton's underground network of getting around. And I think regardless of what is paid for, I think we'll strive, unless the commission or future commission changes our direction, to make sure we can reconnect trail where it makes sense. And in some cases that may be in conjunction with the FEMA project, and in some cases it might be a separate project.
So I'm just responding to citizens who have said to me, I don't know, we've had some podcasts or something along the creek at some point in the last 2 months doing something, and people are excited. Is that the trail? Is that the creek? Is that the flood mitigation? What is that? And so it's fair to say that we are still in limbo with FEMA, and we are making those decisions
Yes, so I think the very earliest we'd see some funding would be, maybe the first of the year. And what we'll really prioritize is infrastructure projects, in places where we're concerned about critical infrastructure. Not, you know, necessarily the maintenance trail associated with that, although in some places there may be some trail associated with that. Todd's staff is working, to open trail where they can and when they can. We've had some additional heavy rains where we've opened portions of the trail and then had to close it again, so, folks should be excited about knowing that right now the long-term plan is, yeah, we're gonna reconnect trail. It could take a number of years before we get to that.
Thank you for the clarification. I just think we need to keep saying that it's going to take longer than any of us hope, probably. Yes. Thank you.
I'm gonna interrupt, I'm gonna go to the county commission meeting, just because I felt it was important to reiterate what I mentioned to each of you in the email I sent separately to each of you last week regarding Gary's comments. So apologize to bail on our meeting, but it just so happens that we are coinciding with the county commission meeting tonight. So I will be back as soon as possible. Please don't let the discussion drive my absence.
Yeah. Let's double the budget.
Amy, in relation to that, and then staff started thinking about, should these cuts become a reality for the county, in the tune of $71 million, I was trying to quickly add what their cuts would equate to, and it's, what, $75,000, is it that high? Anyways, so a smaller drop in the bucket by any means, but have we started thinking about what happens if that becomes a reality?
Just barely, because we found out,
Sure.
Wednesday or Thursday, that this was a potential, and we don't know yet for sure what's going to happen. You know, one of the things that, the library director, Dana Schmidt, and I visited about was the fact that, there was a time where, the thought process behind that $24,000 that's contributed to the library was to help sort of, offset the cost of out-of-city resident cards. And so would that be something they would change? You know, hours of operation, although we would hate to do that, or will we try to find a way to do that? You know, it is easy for people to say, well, this is a drop in the bucket compared to these funds, but many of these funds are obligated and they're not operational funds. You know, I can ask all the departments, if I said, hey, find $12,000 out of your operating, they're not gonna like it, because we've gone to the point where, our operatings our budgets are pretty thin. You know, when you look at even the capital for the airport or the center, there's a lot of things we'd love to do, and we really, in the end, have a list, by the time we get to May, have a list of things we have to do, and we're choosing 2 or 3 things of the 10 or 12 that we need to do. So, you know, it's not gonna be, you know, pandemonium if we'll have to make it work. Had we had this information earlier, it would have been maybe easier to have that discussion collectively, but we didn't have it. But we will have to make adjustments. One of the reasons why we asked for what we did, and it really, I should reiterate, it really wasn't asked, why we budgeted what we did for the senior center is they've got a HVAC system that's on its last legs. You know, when we realize that something like that needs to be repaired, we can wait until it completely, you know, is unserviceable and doesn't work and there's nothing we can do, and then scramble. We just don't like operating that way. We like to see that, you know, we have a plan, and I don't wanna put those folks in a position where it's January and the heat goes out. You know, that can be hard on the building long-term and cost more, so, you know, I don't know if we'd make adjustments elsewhere and still try to get that improvement done, or if we just haven't talked about it. And we haven't, to be fair, talked with the respective boards either. So The library board, of course, is just learning about this, the center board is just learning about this. The airport board is just learning about this, and we wanna have their input as well. And I haven't even talked to the staffs at great length about this, so. It's just something you all should know, because we'll have to make some adjustments within what we have here, if those decisions are made that way.
Overall, this is the most, I think the most uncertain budget that I've seen, because it relies so much on, I mean, what ifs. I know I like it, when I read through it, I thought, wow, there's so many what ifs. You know, what if FEMA doesn't pay a penny? What is our fail-safe plan in regards to that? We do the infrastructure, obviously we fix our pipes and the main portion. You know, I know you have a good plan for that. And then when it comes to the aquatic, how do we know what this bid could fluctuate $2-3 million?
Yeah.
But I think that the most important thing is, and I know we're on a good schedule because we found out that in Highway 50 bidding at the right time of year. I think it's so important that we make sure we get our ducks in a row on our bids to have them ready in the fall. We've proven that we get better bids.
I think that's what you call a backhanded compliment, it's a certain uncertain.
Yeah.
But you're
I
absolutely,
was so certain about it, but I wasn't.
yeah, but you're absolutely right. And I would say that I don't think, this level of uncertainty would be, digestible by folks that didn't know that, you know, and you guys have all been really good about knowing that we have the right people in the chairs in the city staff and competent folks who are, you know, we're constantly monitoring the budget, and they're competent in terms of the areas of responsibility that they have. And you guys have put a lot of trust in us and our abilities, to do this. Also, it is just like a home budget, you know, I have certain things that I plan to buy this year, pending I stay employed, pending, you know, I don't have my car breakdown, pending we don't have, you know.
Maybe they sell it,
Yeah, so, you know, I have those plans too, and anything can happen. We had a plan this year and March 13th happened.
I think
So
that's-
things can change. It is supposed to be a living and breathing document. You guys can change it too.
Exactly, and that's important to realize during the year 2020, we have the opportunity the option to every single bid that comes through, whether it's a tractor or a land purchase or whatever, we can deal with it at that time to make adjustments.
Yes.
Knowing that gives me more certainty.
Good. You know,
In an uncertain world.
but you know, who can plan for an emergency? You know, we just can't, and, you know, we could have those things, and we hope we don't, but we try to do the best we can, and, you know, if we would have something happen in our local economy that we hadn't planned for, we'd have to make adjustments. I mean, we saw that happen, you know, in some communities in our country during the recession, where they had to cut 30% of their budget really quickly. Fortunately, we're not in that position, but I'd be able to be nimble if we are.
In the situation where FEMA contributes 75% would be, you know, that would be a win for us, I think. Are you aware of examples where other communities that have suffered disaster relief, does the state provide any funds to help offset some of that cost? And if so, are those conversations with our state representatives that maybe petition the state? Because Yankton County received a substantial portion of the damage as a whole for that Martin Luther King event. And so the question is, could we work with, have we broached the idea of working through the state to help offset some of our costs?
Yes, so, our plan is to sit down, and once we have a little more information, to sit down with our state reps and talk with them a little bit about what we think the realities are for our success in funding. The legislature did set aside some money before they recessed for emergencies. It's a smaller amount of money, it's $500,000, but when you think of the number of communities impacted and the cost of projects, that doesn't stretch very far. But they may have the opportunity to address that, again. Also, the state can, if we can show financial need, can certainly help us, with matching. So I said, 25-75, but, with financial need, you can get some matching dollars to help with that 25 from the state. So depending upon what they require for financial need, I certainly think with the debt that we have and the infrastructure debt that we have for our water plant and the repairs that we need to make to some of our critical infrastructure, we can probably show that need. But that will just depend.
Get more info from the state first.
I've also talked with the, some of you know I sit on the South Dakota Municipal League Board. I've talked with some of my fellow board members about, hey, any chance we ever wanna talk about a bill that would touch again on the sales tax, a local controlled sales tax penny, if the president declares a disaster, to be used only for disaster relief. So you talk about a Wessington Springs or the snowstorm out east out west a few years ago that happened in October that devastated, cattle crops, or this situation that we've had. Would that be something that the state legislatures would maybe get behind and give us the authority to do, so we can help ourselves? I don't necessarily know how much South Dakota will be allocated or our FEMA region will be allocated, so we may be capped not based on how successful we are, but how much money there's available for our area.
Thank you.
Don't you guys wanna kind of grill the department heads a little bit on some stuff?
Yeah, we pick on today.
We've changed the $1 Million Man title. It's gone away now from Kyle and it's gone to Todd's. Todd's in charge of the cricket and the aquatics facility.
I don't get to pick on him anymore?
Kyle looks a little relieved.
We'll gladly step away from that title.
Sure, maybe they can all address, in their budget, kind of what they see as kind of their biggest need or hot spot coming up for us to consider as we look at this, that we can't live without or do without.
No, you start?
Sure.
Wow,
I
okay.
can do a couple of quick things. There's two things that are a little bit different than the things that we had previously done. And one is a certain uncertainty event. It talks about the SRO at the middle school that we've talked about for a long time. I had a number of meetings with Dr. Kendall. They're looking at helping fund that at a percentage if we don't get other funds. The grant funds for the hiring process for SROs has been frozen for the last 2 years. We just got notified recently that those funds have been unfrozen because the lawsuit has been settled with another large community. So they're going to be opening those grant funds up within the next probably 60 days. And we'll be deciding on who gets funding for those by December. We're going to actually apply for that because that would actually pay us a significant portion of the SROs for those first 3 years, and still working in conjunction with the school. So that would be a change, and it's an unknown until we see, one, if we get the funds, and then two, what the level of funding that the school district.
Because you're full-time. Your
Well, it'd
budget
be a
is.
second full-time, we already had.
Right, I understand that, so basically what you're saying is.
We'd have two
would be a
full-time.
Two full-time.
So it'd be an additional of one body, but the first 3 years would be 75% basically grant funded, if we get the grant. If not, we'll push it on down the road to where we actually make an agreement with the school. So it's up in the air, but we're looking at that. But it could happen much quicker than we thought because of the lawsuit being settled at the national level and the funds coming available.
Without going into a lot of details, obviously, in the schools.
Oh,
two
absolutely.
full-time.
One of the things that
Unfortunately.
we've been talking about at length, particularly in the middle school, is our current SRO spends a significant amount of time in the middle school, and we have needs at the high school as well, so it's being pulled both directions. And I think it'd make a much safer environment in both areas, and to allow us to be a lot more proactive in dealing with the students. So that's one of the things. The other thing that we're looking at doing is trying to use technology in some of our training. As you're all aware, our range has been underwater. We haven't been able to do any firearms training for over the last 6 months. It's still unusable. But one of the things we're looking at doing is trying to look at virtual training, scenario-based training, where we can actually do, it doesn't offset the need for actual firearms training, but actually helps us there. But in addition, it looks at helping us to put together a scenario where we teach the escalation, de-escalation that's going on in the country. You see all the news articles on it. Well, this will give us the ability to actually deal with some of those issues before they happen, which could save us a lot of money in the long term. And those are the two major things that we're looking at. Other than that, we're actually trying to get the full, we have full staffing, but of course it takes us about a year to get the full, the ability to use full staff once we get the people trained. So once we get there, probably around January or February, we might be back to where we can actually put full staffing into the field.
Virtual doesn't replace still hands-on in person,
No,
it
it
just
does not.
enhances it.
It just enhances it and it gives us another ability to deal with decision making. And that's the overview of the two things we're looking at. Everything else pretty much follows the same pattern as the previous years.
For us, it's just to keep up with what we've got. We've been pretty successful with EA's help. Kind of catching up with equipment and things of that nature, and we really appreciate that. A couple of things that we're working on right now is communications based. We really do need pagers. Probably it was 2 years too late in asking for them. They're failing at a pretty high rate right now. Trying to get them prepared, so the pagers are in the budget. We appreciate that if it sticks. But then just tying into also the new PD city radio system. We've never really been able to talk to this firm directly, so I'm gonna try to get that solved. We've been really pretty successful in getting equipment out of grants. We've been able to take a lot of stuff off the capital list by getting homeland security grants, FEMA grants, and some private grants. So we've been trying to do that. We're working with the county, hopefully the district, to try to firm up some funding for rescue services. And on the communication side, I think down the line, over the next 10 years, probably for sure, we're gonna have to take a look at countywide what emergency services is gonna do for communications, because the last narrowbanding project that the federal government put out really cut our coverage in the county for communications, which deals with how we deal with the other entities, the fire departments, and people coming in also. So communications and technology, we're just trying to keep up with technology, but keeping up with the equipment, turning them over as we need to is probably some of the biggest things we do.
I've really noticed that, in responding to calls, that if you get way out there, it's really hard to hear
Yep.
what you guys are doing.
Yeah, and that's gonna be, I don't know how much the city will do, but that's not gonna be a cheap fix eventually. So it's something we're gonna have to take a look at, and it's just another thing on the plate for.
And really important for safety,
It is.
for the firefighters and for the, and for the people that take care of it.
Todd, you're up.
What are you fighting for, Todd?
Pick and choose is always tough. I think if you think about recreation and youth sports, I think youth soccer is celebrating what maybe having a home, but I think that needs to be looked at the Yankton situation. I think we're gonna have lots of meetings coming up in the future to plan and be a partner and how we get to where they want to go. Again, Park Advisory Board wants to start talking about youth baseball and youth softball, going back to the Stockwell master plan from almost 9 years ago. So we'll have to have some of those discussions and how we get them to where they wanna go. Department-wise, we have some retirements coming up in the near future, and that's gonna affect the quality of the jobs we do and how we find replacements for some of those people. Again, talking partnerships, Amy mentioned it, I think Great Life and where do they fit in with recreation in the community, at the SAC, at the new aquatic center. So again, talking partnerships and having lots of meetings to figure out how they can help us with the budget crunch that we do have. Trail is gonna be FEMA, and that's gonna be the word of the day for many years to come. The one area maybe where we don't have any real great needs is the cemetery, so things are pretty steady there. And then when you think about parks is just maintaining our facilities, and at some point, again, everything gets to an end of a useful life, and so we just gotta really focus on doing the best we can to extend life of everything that we have, but again, we'll have some play equipment and some things in our parks that are gonna come, that are gonna have to be replaced, but, so.
On the water plant side, we're getting that finished up, so that's gonna be a big project. We've done a lot of work on the raw water side with the collecting well, the water treatment plant, but don't forget, we've got a distribution system with a lot of underground infrastructure with aging, so we continue to be putting money in those water main projects and things like that. And on the wastewater side, we're starting to see a lot of aging infrastructure issues at the wastewater plant facility, and we're seeing a lot of infiltration issues that we've never seen up until last fall. This last event this weekend even caused our facility to basically max out. So we're really gonna be in the process at the wastewater plant is really trying to collect some really good data through our condition assessment, getting our GIS system up and running, and getting our collection system modeling done, so that as we move into that wastewater plant, what direction we wanna go and how we wanna get to that, we have the good data to set us in the right direction. So that'll probably be the biggest issue in the next couple of years, is just getting that modeling up and running, getting us that information, getting that condition assessment done, and then beyond that, moving into some major infrastructure improvements to the wastewater facility.
So you won't be the least expensive date for long. What do you see as the shelf life? I mean, I know you can't put an actual date on that, but with the wastewater plant, how near is that knocking on our door of becoming a pretty major issue, as Amy said, that something gives and.
There's gonna be some things knocking on the door already next year. When I say some things, they're gonna be smaller projects. And when I say smaller, anywhere from a couple $100,000 to a couple $1 million on some of our things. Actually, a major overhaul of the wastewater facility, we're still 5-6 years out at least. But we are gonna have some infrastructure issues that we're gonna have to address starting this fall already. With our pipe and our sinkhole and some other things that we can have next year. But based on what that condition assessment.
And some of that is in.
Some of that is in.
And did you say when the assessment's gonna be done?
We should have it done here in the next couple of months.
The Public Works Department, I'd say it'd be just, doing our street repairs and replacements as efficiently and as effectively as we can with our in-house services, our engineering department, our street department, working with the environmental services department on like the water main distribution system, coordinating those projects together and just trying to do those as efficiently as we can with the second penny funds that we have available. And keep that moving forward so we can continue to have the street infrastructure that we do have and keep it in a good condition. So. And then there is, as Amy stated, some needs at the transfer station with joint powers that we'll have to work through. That equipment does take a lot of abuse when it works with garbage or solid waste. It's a very hard on equipment, and it tends to age quicker than your typically used equipment. So we'll continue to work with that.
A large part of our budget is second penny, and a lot of people think, oh, well, we can use second penny. The commission and past commissions have restricted second penny, and that's part of the reason why you see the high quality infrastructure we have. Now, this year we had some weather things that went crazy, and there wasn't anything we could do about heating and sinkholes and those types of things, but by and large, if you look around the state, Yankton's done a great job with maintaining its roads. We have a lot of concrete roads that last longer. We have a great maintenance program. We've taken care of our bridges in town. All those things take money, but we've done well, and the history of Yankton is that they've done well to not let things fall too far behind. Once that happens with infrastructure, it's just too expensive to get back. So, I mean, I think that's always been a priority in our community, and will remain I don't think Dana's back yet, but I'll try to speak with Dana. I think for the library, there is a desire for, looking at new facilities. Libraries, we all know, have become more than a place for checking out books. They've really become a programming and educational and meeting space. It's not your mama's library anymore. And our library, for as limited as we are, is space, and personnel and budget, does a great job bringing all kinds of programming. And they could do so much more if they had, more space and more ability to do that. So I think that's an issue for them. You know, they continue to look at ways to bring new people to the library for new things, and like all amenities, you need to keep changing to stay relevant, and that's hard to do, especially technology-wise, in that facility. So I think that's a need and a challenge for them, and we'll be talking about that in the future. In terms of, and Al can interrupt me, but so can Ross, in terms of sort of what I call the administration and finance, city management, and legal, I think that there's a trend to go more and more digitally, but with that, there's some risk, of course, as we all know, with various things that come up, and that plays into information and technology services. So there's cost with that. I think the cost of doing the work of administration is higher and higher, you know. I think, at least I've seen in terms of city government, the need for attorney involvement seems to become more and more. I mean, Ross is basically in City Hall at least once a day working on something, and our ordinances do continue to need updated, and if we do come into a legal issue, those things are more expensive and lengthier than they had been at one time. Elections is something we're responsible for, you know, making sure, I think we'll see in the future, not just in Yankton, but across municipalities, the expenses and detail that needs to be put into those probably become more and more critical, because we're continuing with privacy and making sure we're, you know, all doing all those things correctly. We've done a good job with that. I don't know, Al, if you wanna add anything.
No, other than reiterating what you said about technology, you know, and elections. The buzz right now is election protection. More and more, you're gonna see more demands to have technology help you with your election, but that it's secure. And it's gonna cost more, you know. We're already seeing that in our elections creeping up in expenses, but it's gonna be more. And the only thing that's gonna help is some federal funding or state funding that helps get some of the equipment. Our vote counting machine, I think most of you have been there and witnessed the travails that happen some evenings when it's just not cooperating. I finally found out just this week that the county is gonna get a new voting machine, so that'll be nice. And again, the county owns that machine. We just use that with them in cooperation with many of the other things we do when we cooperate with the county. So.
Do you see, or is there anything on the horizon of it all going electronic? Or do you think that that's a long ways off yet?
I think that's ways off yet.
Ways off.
Again, it's being driven by the national concerns. So that's what will drive the local too. You know, short of you deciding you're gonna spend a ton of money on the election machines and stuff like that, you know, and again, I'm not saying it's not important, but how many municipal elections do we actually have? One a year, basically. This last year, we actually had 2 because we had an opt-out too. And I hesitate to be flippant, but I don't think the Russians influenced the pool decision. I think that was local people.
Sure.
You may one other thing that I just wanted to mention too, and probably should have been the first thing you mentioned. One of the things we're running into is just staffing. We're gonna be seeing some retirements over the next few years. We've been very good at retaining volunteers, which on the other end means they're gonna retire. So we've seen more retirements now over the last year than we have, so just the concern of keeping the volunteers coming in, and it's not free to put a volunteer on, I mean, unless we can properly outfit them in something we already have, it's gonna cost us $2,000 a person or more to just outfit them. So, not everybody's cut out to, that applies, is cut out to do public safety, I think Jerry can attest to that really well. So we get applications in that we really can't take, or that aren't cut out for the job, but, we need volunteers coming in, so, hopefully we can continue to get those folks in, and that's probably one of the biggest concerns, is keeping our volunteer.
Wayne, do you wanna talk a little bit about dispatch and IT?
Sure. You know, just to talk a little bit about the budget, I think this is either my 21st or 22nd budget, so I've been around long enough now that I've gone full circle, so this will be the second time we've fixed Martin Creek when I've been helping with the budget, so. You know, one of our challenging things, and I've got some great staff that work for me both in IT and dispatch, so I'm really thankful for that. You know, we really saw the fruition of the commission's investment in GIS this year. The ability to use drone imagery to help categorize and assess the flood damage has been invaluable in being able to convey both the before and after to FEMA, and I think that that's going to have a very positive impact on our ability to access federal funds. You know, as everybody went down the line, most of those projects that everybody has talked about will be involved in at some level. We're excited to get the radio project done this year. As soon as it's done, we're going to be looking at beyond technology for the police department, which allows them to use cellular telephones on the radio system. So any of the administrative staff that will be able to pull up and access the radio system from their cell phone. We're going to trial run 800 megahertz pagers for the fire department on the system when it's up and running. We're going to look at, in Kyle's case, helping work with implementing a GIS system for doing water and wastewater distribution and collection analysis. The list kind of goes on. One of the overwhelming concerns, and we've seen it locally too, is cybersecurity. Trying to do the best that we can with the resources we have to protect our investments and safeguard our information and our materials. We're going to be doing a redesign of the website in 2020, which will be exciting. You know, continuing to try to offer additional services both to the public for accessing government and for transparency purposes. You know, I think that one of the exciting things about my job and working in the field and working with the people that I am, the department heads and Amy and the commission, is, you know, my job changes every day. So, you know, what I come to work thinking we're going to be doing today, next year will be completely different. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. I think that, you know, it's Yankton's always been what I consider a tweener community. And what I mean by that is we're big enough to need the investment in the technology and the programming and the software to make our jobs more efficient. But the cost for that technology is the same whether we're 15,000 people or 50,000 people. So you have that, you know, economic terms, that marginal return on the investment, those fixed costs. We don't have the population to spread those over, so I think that's always a challenging item to be able to give both the staff and the community the resources that they'd like to use.
I'll just try to mention community development quickly. I think,
Dwayne, question. So Dwayne, with phishing, spear phishing and ransomware and all these threats, are those things we can stay on top of with the staff we have, or are those things that we're gonna have to look at sourcing out some expertise as they become more complicated?
You know, there's a big movement nationwide, and I try to keep abreast of kind of some of the trends. You know, one of the larger publications that I read talks about, you know, should local government be involved in doing their own IT solutions and their own security solutions. And it's kind of a mixed bag from the standpoint of, you know, do you have the level of expertise and the talent available? Yes, no, can you pay folks enough to really bring truly experts on? I don't know. But what I do know for a fact is when you look at companies and jurisdictions that have a tremendous amount of resources, Equifax, Target, Citibank, and they all have giant security problems. I think that, you know, we do the best that we can with the resources we have. You know, one of the big things is end user education. You know, you can do a lot from a security standpoint, but when that person's sitting at their desk and they click on an email or they click on a link, all of the security measures can quickly be defeated by just a simple mistake. And so, you know, you do as much as you can. I don't know if that really answers your question, Nathan, but that's kind of my viewpoint on it. You know, we try to make sure that we invest in good protection for our networks. We do as much as we can with backup and off-site backup, educating our end users. Most of the department heads get tired of me talking about it because every couple of months I'm like, okay, this is going around. Make sure you tell your people, don't click on email links. Don't open things from people you don't expect to. You know, even beyond that, the level of the attacks has become more sophisticated. You know, the city had a recent phishing attempt that was an attempt to change the direct deposit for employees. You know, they contacted the finance department, they contacted human resources, they had the names and positions of people that actually work for the city. We're a small enough organization that, you know, HR walked down the hall to one of the individuals. So it was very easily, hey, this is not legit. You know, we've made changes in our internal policies to kind of combat that. I think it's going to be an ever-changing situation. The only truly safe environment is one that's not connected. And unfortunately, we're not going back that way.
Just a broader philosophical question too, with your mention of retirements. One thing we've noticed in healthcare is that it used to be if you were short staffed, you could call in people and they would come in. They'd be willing to drop what they were doing and come in. And we're finding that's harder and it's harder and harder to find employees who are willing to do that. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just, you know, we have different priorities today. So is that something we're seeing and will that require us to potentially have more staff to fill some of these positions?
I guess I won't speak individually for the departments. I think most of the folks that we have working for the city, they're doing it for more than employment. They have a belief in public service. So, you know, I really feel like when we need folks, they get there. You know, and the flood is a really great example of how humbling that was when their own homes were at risk and they were out making sure everyone was safe. We've got that fabric and culture in our organization. However, you know, we've got, I think, 4 or maybe even 5 generations of workforce working in our organization, and there's a lot of differences. Some folks value money more than time. Some value their time more than money. We're really having to look at doing things that, as bureaucrats, we're not used to because, you know, we're trained like you come in at 8 and you have a lunch at noon and you leave at 5, and that's not how the world works anymore. So we're looking at being flexible with people and trying to, you know, recruit talent and be able to be flexible with that. But, you know, sometimes the nature of our work, police work, water, sewer emergencies, snow removal, we have to have people there. And we do try to do upfront communicate that in a good way, you know, in a clear way, so we get the right people. But I think finding folks is a community problem as well. So we're just, you know, we have great folks that work for the city. and we have great folks retiring, so trying to get those folks in. And I don't know that any organization will be benefiting from folks that stay at an organization for 30, 40 plus years like we've had. That just might not be how the younger workforces view work life. So we have to be smart about making sure we can use technology to help them work and learn in quicker and smarter ways than maybe we have in the past. So yes and no. I think by and large, people don't look to go to community service of any kind and think that there's going to be, we're here because people need us. I mean, that's kind of how we roll. So I did want to touch on community development. I think Dave may have a slightly different answer, but I think one of his challenges is going to be highly challenging, more maybe so than others, because it's something he may not have a lot of control over. Housing is a big issue in our community. Managing housing, where can we grow, how can we grow? We need not just folks, but also places for folks to live. And so his department's charged with helping accommodate that growth, but he can't control who might come to develop and who might come to the table. So I think they'll be challenged with that in the future, going forward as well. Dave's department oversees the airport. We have some very exciting projects happening at the airport: apron expansion, crosswind runway. The airport's Mike's done a phenomenal job of really being an advocate for our airport, and an airport's a critical part of a community's transportation network, but they are not cheap to run. We've been real fortunate with federal grants, but the federal government maybe is gonna be as predictable with funding as it has been, and at one point, they'll stop spending as much money as they have. So, we have to look at making sure we can maintain all the improvements. I think that'll be a challenge at the airport, as well, but, I think there's been really good recent attention on our airport, and it's definitely an asset in our community. So I'm probably missing some entities, so I apologize if I am. I think overall we can all say the expectation in public service is a challenge. When I started in public service, I didn't think about community engagement. We have a whole level now that we're trying to learn how to implement on social media and communication and outreach, and that wasn't something that was part of the vernacular years ago. So those aren't necessarily high dollar amounts, but they cost in terms of time and also making sure we're doing them correctly. And we don't always get that right, but we're working on that. So that's been a challenge, because that's all of our teams are responsible for doing that piece. It's not really maybe necessarily something that comes natural for everyone. So. Our timeline going forward, and we can have more discussion and have more questions, but our timeline going forward, of course, is that we will present this budget to you, of course, with any other direction or changes that you would like to make as an introduction on the 26th, and then we will have time for you all to get feedback from the public, and we'll have a public hearing on September the 9th, I believe that's the Monday. So between now and then, there's time for input from anyone. This year, we've put together a citizen's guide to the budget, so if people don't want to print out a 190-page document, there's a citizen's guide. We have a few copies tonight that's also on our website to kind of hit the highlights, and it may just get people introduced to the budget and maybe give them an interest in looking somewhere else deeper or have questions. We realize people probably don't want to spend time combing through all that, so that's available to them as well. We have information on social media as well, on Facebook, about all of our meeting times and locations. And people are certainly welcome to visit with myself or any of the staff or particulars that they have, questions they have, or understanding the different funds and how they all come together, because it is complex thing to understand.
The BBB, I said this before in our other budget meeting, that I'm not in favor of 450,000. I think that it's just too much. I know that's flexible, I know that, I hope that it's much smaller, but I don't like the fact that we're going into BBB that hard with that work project. I hope that, really cover it without dipping that far into the BBB.
My hope would be that we don't have to dip at all into that. I don't think that that's probably realistic, but my sense is that it won't be at full count. I also didn't plan any increase, you know, when you look at that balance, so I think that we'll just have to walk through it. As you guys act on the budget, that won't be the only opportunity to make that determination. And we'll be talking through that as we get closer to awarding the bids, and depends on what alternates you wanna do and those types of things as well, so.
If we get down to 98,000, where does that put us then for like the next year? How are we gonna burn it completely out by the next year, or
Well,
our current spending?
We do have a five-year plan, and of course, that's subject to change. Part of that's gonna depend upon the revenue levels. You know, part of that's the direction you give. So we heard, a couple years ago that you'd like to keep a smaller balance, but a balance. And maybe you'll wanna go into a time of building that balance back up to, I think last year or 2 years ago, you talked about $300,000 to $400,000. And, you know, a couple of years where you don't increase your expenditures, you do that. We do have other expenses coming up, though. You know, we talk a lot about meeting room equipment in our regular meeting room, in your commission chambers. That equipment probably isn't suitable long-term for the type of social media and public information that we wanna provide, so. That's something that we look to use BBB funds for. And then there's things that come up we never think about that just are opportunities, so it's nice to have a fund balance. I know soon, Casey Haberman will be coming forward and talking about a strategic plan, for CVB, which, we do provide funds to CVB, but this would be, she may be requesting some assistance with that. Now, that would be a big dollar amount, but it's nice to have some funds to be able to do those things, partner in that way, so.
She did say she's getting some good buy-in from stakeholders. So hopefully that will
Yeah.
alleviate our costs.
Amy, you had mentioned the facade grant program. Does that decrease from 30 to 20? Right, it was 38,000 last budget? Is that correct?
Yes,
The
so,
decrease from 30 to 20, was that simply budgetary, or was it, did we not use all funds last year for that?
no, we've used all funds, you know, I bolstered it, a couple of years, because it was so popular, and it's still very popular. It's just a means of looking for, some cash. You know, I scaled back on some other items in the BBB, including the repayment HSC land, because the commission's been, when you've been selling city property, you're putting that towards the repayment of the HSC land. So I was looking at ways, you know, we can scale back a little bit to give a little cushion if we needed one for the aquatics facility. So if the commission would decide, no, this downtown facade grant is very important and we wanna go back up to 30, that would just change that ending balance, fund balance to, I think it's 85 now, to 75. And that would be if that total amount of 450 would be spent on the aquatics facility. Another reason is you guys made a huge investment in the downtown on Walnut Street, capital investment, which, by the way, looks beautiful. We had a meeting at Stockwell Engineers today, and I was pretty surprised how many people were walking around downtown. Hadn't seen that in a long time, and so I do think that the investment is drawing activity and interest in that area of the community. But that was another reason, because that big investment was made, to see if some of that would spark some private investment. But certainly if you wanna go back to 30, I know it will be applied for and probably spent. It's a 50-50 match, as you'll remember, for facades in the Meridian district.
So I would say, you know, even if we stayed at the 20, And so we got 2, 3 really good projects that it took us over 20 weeks to adjust at that point too.
Yeah, you can always adjust it further. You know, one of the things we've kind of been looking for is for one big project. And we haven't quite seen that yet, we've seen some smaller improvements. It'd be nice to see one big, very big change. And if, you know, somebody came in with something, you could decide at that time.
We talked about West Side Park, though.
We didn't talk about West Side Park, and Todd, you may wanna have that conversation. I had too many meetings last night to get to the West Side Park plan, so I haven't even heard all the outcomes from that planning meeting.
We had our, presentation, we took our 3 plans and took public comment down to one plan to bring to the commission on August 26th, so, we had 10, 15 people in the room last night, give a few more comments, so there's a few tweaks we'll make to the plan, but, again, as we talked about earlier, I think there's, maintaining of what we do have and then figuring out how we go forward to implement that master plan, and that is probably the reality of, you know, it's a 20-year plan before all of those things come to fruition, if they all come to fruition, so there's some updating of current amenities, and there's maybe a few additional amenities. So it was good to have the public input that we did to get to the place that we're at. It'll be interesting to see what kind of comments we get from the city commission, and if any of the public is there on August 26th, so. But no, it's a good plan. Again, just a matter of how we get it done in the future, and we know, I talked about it a little bit earlier, partnerships, and part of partnerships will be private funding of more and more items in our parks.
Stephanie and I were both there, and I think the overwhelming feeling was that it was a great end result. New people in attendance. Do we have anything in the budget for next year? Like, I know the playground equipment's outdated, is that?
No, I think that's, I wanna say it's 2022 or 2023.
And that could change if we have a partner who wants to, you know, work on a project with us. That's kind of a new normal now for cities and for us. We're looking at an improvement in Memorial Park to include some bocce ball courts. That will be a privately funded opportunity. We just don't have the ability to budget for those things, and Sertoma Park's seen a lot of that where private donors have helped us out. So that could change if we have a business or an entity or a person that wants to either sponsor or help us work on a project.
On a related note, have we got any indication from the Historical Society when they think their building might be demolished or moved?
I have not heard anything.
What about any update on the skate park amenities that I believe the city has agreed to match funds, and is that budgeted yet?
That's budgeted in this year's budget, yes.
Yeah, Matt Evans had been attending the West Side Park meetings. He did not come last night. I know on the Facebook, the last time I checked, 10,000 was the goal, had reached the 10,000 plateau. We had this discussion at the park advisory board last night. I'm not sure how that fundraising works, if you have to get to the 10 to get the 10, or everything goes back, or you'll get at some point whatever was raised. But yes, it was a matching situation, so if Matt would come in and say, hey, we have $3,500, we'd like to order some equipment, we made the commitment to match whatever amount they brought in up to $10,000. It'd be a $20,000 total project then. I know he had been talking to Colbert Pioneer about trying to figure out if somebody could come down and help with the half pipe, the metal half pipe, and getting some height cut off of that, so it was more user-friendly for the skateboarders. But he had been communicating with Dave, had been communicating a little bit with me, but hadn't had much communication with him now in the middle of the summer, so not sure where he's at and when he'll come in with a request. So.
Just a point of reference, Amy, in the budget, when it's a city and school split cost, does the budget reflect the whole cost or the city cost?
The budget reflects the whole cost.
Okay, thank you. Newbie question.
We all have them.
Well, judging by the fact that it's only 6:45 and our discussion seems to be at an end, I don't think we'll have to meet tomorrow.
I'll do the throw chair.
I'll then throw a chair.
These two.
It's mellowed.
Close to adjourn.
Second.
Motion to second. Before we do that, I'll just
I was gonna ask.
update you. So Commissioner Swenson had a few comments that he opened the meeting with. And he explained that in the cartoon, he was the politician. So it wasn't a swipe at us, it was a swipe at himself. And he referenced a few times he felt threatened with violence. So I still shared my thoughts on the matter, but I left right away, so I don't know what happened after that. So, with that, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?